Hi, and welcome back to our series, 5 Easy Steps to Speak Spanish with Confidence. Today's step is easy step number 2, and I'm going to teach you how to build your vocabulary and learn 10 new words a day. But first, let's go back and review a little bit. In our last lesson, I taught you how to create a Spanish journal. Have you started doing it yet? I really can't stress the importance. It seems like a very simple concept, but it is so powerful because if you create a journal where you're writing down your goals and objectives, it's going to help you focus on learning what's really important to you. You're really going to be able to identify the types of dialogues and the words that you need to learn that are relevant to you and your daily activities, as well as it's going to be the most practical way for you to learn Spanish. So I hope you're doing that, but we're going to go ahead and continue along into today's lesson, easy step number 2, which is all about building vocabulary. So words are really the building blocks of any language. With words we can communicate. We don't need to start studying Spanish and really dive into the complex verb conjugations and grammar rules and things like that. The most powerful piece of advice I can give to just about anybody is to start by just learning vocabulary. So today I'm going to teach you how to choose a good topic that's going to be relevant to you. If you're writing your journal, you should have already identified the things that are relevant to you. Next, I'm going to tell you what types of words you should be adding to this topic, and then at the end of the video today I'm going to teach you a really cool trick that will help you memorize the words as quickly as possible. So before I get into it, however, I think it's really important for you to understand that my experience with Spanish was really difficult. For me, it was a battle, it was a struggle. It's odd, I don't think many people believe me today because I'm actually a Spanish professor and speak Spanish more or less perfectly with a native level of proficiency. But it was not an easy experience for me. I, like many people, thought that the best way to learn Spanish is to do an immersion trip, to get on a plane and go to a Spanish-speaking country. So I did that. I went to Spain, I was in Barcelona, and I enrolled in a very intensive Spanish program. So I was in 4 hours a day of Spanish classes from Monday through Friday. I was living with a host family, with a Spanish host family. And in Spain, especially back at this time, this was back in 2001, I really didn't find a lot of people that spoke English. So this was really, truly what we would call immersion. It was, to be quite honest with you, for a brand new beginning level Spanish student, way too difficult. I mean, I really didn't speak any Spanish at the time. I was starting from practically zero. You know, I knew the basic words like everybody does here: baño, cerveza, rojo, donde está la biblioteca, but that was about it. I mean, I couldn't even practically introduce myself to somebody, ask for directions, order food. I couldn't do any of the things that I really needed to do. So I would find myself in this situation where I would go out to eat at a restaurant and I would just hold up the menu to the waiter and point to him something on the menu that I wanted to eat. I didn't know what I was ordering. I can't tell you how many times I did not get what I wanted to eat. But back to the actual experience of studying Spanish, my teacher didn't speak a word of English, so here she was trying to explain to me the Spanish language, vocabulary, grammar rules, the verb tenses, the verb conjugations in Spanish. But I didn't understand what she was saying. So imagine how frustrating it would be to sit in a classroom with somebody for 4 hours of them going, blah, 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 blah. ¿Entiendes? Do you understand? Blah, 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 blah. Do you understand? And me going, no, I don't understand. No, I don't know. No entiendo. It was frustrating. I wouldn't recommend for anybody that's just starting to learn Spanish to try and do an immersion trip. I think you should really try and get a foundation with the Spanish language, get up to about an intermediate level before you do immersion. Don't get me wrong, I think immersion's great, and I think it has its place, and I think anybody and everybody that wants to learn how to really speak Spanish should do this at the right time, but not when they're getting started. So to continue, I came back from that Spanish immersion trip to Spain with very limited success, But I was still really committed to learning the language. At the time, I was living in Colorado. I was living in a building where the majority of my neighbors spoke Spanish, and I was working a construction job where the majority of the people on the work site also spoke Spanish and spoke very little English. So I was set and determined to learn how to speak Spanish so I could communicate with my neighbors and communicate with the people that I worked with. So I went and I enrolled at the University of Colorado in Boulder in a nighttime Spanish class. It was 2 days a week. The good news about this was my Spanish teacher was English. So I had to go back from the beginning. I enrolled in the very first level of Spanish. My professor was a native English speaker teaching me Spanish, but she had lived all over the world. She had her PhD in Spanish. Great teacher. And this time around I could explain what she was saying. But there was still a very big disconnect. I wanted to learn how to speak Spanish, which if you're like most of the students that I want to work with, or that I work with, you probably want to learn how to speak Spanish. The problem I found with the university program is that it was all about the grammar and the rules. We spent just massive amounts of times studying these verb conjugations, which if you're just getting started, you'll get to the verb conjugation soon enough. It's very confusing, it's very stressful for the brain. And then on top of it, I mean, imagine in a big classroom, this is actually a pretty small classroom in the picture. My class had about 50 students in it. So it was really, I'm sure the professor maybe wanted to teach us how to speak and wanted to do more conversational activities, but with 50 students in a classroom, you just can't talk. You can't have 50 students talking at the same time. So what we did was fill in the blank activities, which I really find, they're good to reinforce what you're learning, but they don't do anything for the mouth. They don't do anything for your listening comprehension. When you want to learn how to speak a language, you have to understand that you're exercising your brain. There's over 50 muscles in the face alone that have to learn how to interact with each other. You've got to develop your ear. Think about your ear as its own little muscle. You have to learn how to listen to Spanish. And then you have to coordinate all these different moving pieces at the same time. So with most college and university programs, I've found that they're really focused on perhaps the reading and writing aspect of the language, on the rules and the grammar, but very little conversation. So, I had to kind of, again, sit back and think about why I was studying Spanish, Why? Ask yourself, 1 minute, why do you want to learn Spanish? Everybody has different reasons, and all those reasons are valid. In my situation, I really wanted to learn how to speak Spanish so that I could talk to my neighbors and so that I could talk to people on the job site. For you, maybe it's different. Maybe you do want to go into the university and get a teacher's license so you can go teach at the elementary or high schools here, or maybe you want to go all the way through, get a master's and a PhD so that you can teach at the university level. But I'm guessing that you probably want to learn Spanish because you're in a job where there's a lot of people that speak Spanish, or you live in a community where there's just a ton of Spanish-speaking people, or perhaps you're looking to go travel around the world and you'd like to be able to communicate with people on your travels. If any of those reasons are resonating with you, then I'd like to invite you to, think about this program that I've created. I wanted to learn how to speak Spanish, but, at this point I've done the university program, I've done an immersion program. I haven't really seen anything that is giving me what I wanted. So I sat down, I got my pen and paper out, and I got organized. And I thought about, if I want to start talking to people, what's the basis of conversation? Well, it's built on words, it's built on vocabulary. So I wanted to get here where I was speaking to people, but I understood that first and foremost, I needed to build my vocabulary. Now, this is an interesting thing about me as a Spanish professor, and it's a little bit controversial. There's a lot of teachers and professors out there that, to be honest, don't like me because I've come up with these tips and tricks. They've gone through this incredibly difficult, frustrating process of memorizing all these grammar rules, and so they think that their students need to go through this process too. but really you don't. Learning Spanish should be a really fun and easy process. And I've got to be honest, I don't like grammar. That's not to say that I don't speak Spanish well, or I encourage people to speak broken Spanish. Not at all. I'm really referring for especially beginner level students that if you focus on grammar, it's going to be a very confusing, stressful, and impractical situation. Think about it this way. If English is your first language, did your parents give you a grammar book at home when you were learning how to speak, or for that matter, ever? I'm guessing not, unless maybe they happen to be an English teacher. But I guess what I'm trying to get at with this is if you look at the way you learned your first language, you learned it through trial and error. If you have children, then you know that little kids start with words. You know, I have a little son, he's about 2 years old. His very first word was agua, water. That was the only word he could say for about 3 months. And then came mama, papa, then came perro, wow, wow, because we have a little dog too. And then little words started coming slowly but surely. He's learned how to say fruit, the things that he eats. He's learned how to say play because he likes to play. But still, he's been speaking for about 6 months since he said his first word, and it's still just words. He's still not speaking in full, complete sentences. But I can understand what he's trying to say. So, you know, it's a little bit controversial, but I really don't like grammar. I don't encourage it for new students. It has its place once you start speaking Spanish, then it's time to start studying grammar and perfecting your language, but not right at the beginning. Let me give you another example here. We've all been in this situation. Here in the United States, we are very accustomed to speaking with people that come from another country that don't speak English very well. So maybe you're speaking with somebody that is from a different country, and you ask them the question, do you like to eat pizza? And the person responds to you, yes, me like the pizza. Not grammatically correct, it's not a correct sentence, but I guarantee you understand what the person's trying to tell you. So that's why I think that we really don't need to focus on Spanish or on grammar rules. So what's the result? When I realized this, that I really needed to focus on studying words, I started looking at my Spanish lessons that my professor was giving me, and I would take out all of the words from the textbook and write just the words down on a piece of paper. And then I learned a trick of how to really study these words that I'll share with you in a minute. But I started focusing on memorizing these words. And the result was, within about a month, we had an exam, like a little midterm exam, or I think it was maybe just one of the chapter end exams in our test. And something happened that started off to be a little bit embarrassing. My teacher one day sat us all down and called attention to me. Imagine in a classroom of 50 people, the teacher says, class, I want everybody to look at David. So everybody turns and looks at me, and I'm looking around like, uh-oh, this isn't going to be good. I turn bright red in the face. But then she continues and she says, I'm very pleased to announce that for the first time in my 20-year career of teaching Spanish, I have a student that scored a 100% on the exam. So think about this. I stopped studying the grammar, I stopped studying the verb conjugations, and I started just focusing on the vocabulary, and I got a 100%. The reason why is when you understand words, you understand context, and then everything else falls into place. So let's get into the easy step number 2. The first part of this step is to identify a topic, and I've got here in a big star, relevant. This list is something that might resonate with probably 80% of the people out there, but depending on what you do for work and your reasons why you want to learn Spanish, it might be different. I came up for my personal things that I want to talk about is home, school, work, family, food, sports, fun activities, chores, places, and travel. Now, let's say you're a doctor learning Spanish. Maybe you don't care about school. Maybe instead you put in medical terminology, right? So these are the topics that you might have to play a little bit with depending on what's relevant to you. Next, you want to identify 10 words related to that topic. So if we take the first topic, home, well, let's take a look at the words we have. We've got 10 really important words we might want to learn. House, apartment, kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, basement, living room, dining room, garage, yard. Essentially, I've identified the various parts of the house. Write it down on a list. And then we get into the next part of it, which is how to actually build a vocabulary. Get a dictionary and start looking up the words in Spanish. If you don't have a dictionary, you can also use Google. It's really good at doing this, but I wrote down on my piece of paper here, I've got house is casa, apartment is apartamento, kitchen is cocina, bedroom is habitación, etc. And then we focus on memorizing these words. Now, I've got this here. I just absolutely love this book. It's called the Barron's Visual Dictionary, English for Spanish Speakers. It's called English for Spanish Speakers, but it actually goes both ways. The reason why I like it is because it has everything organized by topic. So you can see here, for example, today we're going to learn about gente, which is people. And then on the next page over, we've got the different words. So la familia, right? This was one of my topics. So we learned how to say words like el suegro, la suegra, la cuñada, el cuñado. All the words are identified and organized by topic, and then I just love the visual impact that all the pictures have. So we sell this book here, but you can also look it up on Amazon and get it there. So on this next slide, I'm going to teach you the trick that I've been talking about. It's really not much of a trick. I mean, most of you are probably familiar with this concept, but maybe you don't know exactly how to do it. So flashcards. Flashcards are your best friend when it comes to learning a new language. And all it consists of is having these little, index cards that you can buy from the grocery store. What you want to do is you start off and you take your vocabulary list, right? So our first vocabulary list, we had words like kitchen and apartment or house, right? So you write the English word down on one side and then you write the Spanish word down on the other side. Now, to get the most out of these flashcards, what you want to do is when you're studying with them, you start off so that you're looking at the side in Spanish. So right here we have the word apartamento, right? So the idea here is you start by looking at the word in Spanish and try and say what it means in English. The reason why is the natural process of language acquisition means that you are learning how to understand first. You should always develop your comprehension before your ability to speak the language. So it'll also be a lot easier to do it this way. So we look here and we say, okay, my word is apartamento. I think, okay, that's pretty easy, apartment. Okay, I got it correct. I put it off to the side. Now we have cocina. Maybe cocina is not quite so easy and I have to think about it. I don't know what it means. I look at the definition in English. Cocina means kitchen, okay? Try and say it out loud if you can. Then you put it back at the end of your stack so that you're going to review it again. It's the process of review and repetition that makes it stick to your brain. Okay, my next word is casa. Casa, I know what that means, okay? That means house, so I put it off to the side. And then I come back, and I'm back on the word that caused me problems, cocina. But this time around, I know cocina means kitchen. I look at it, I'm correct. I put it off to the side. If you're doing this in just 10 words at a time, it'll be pretty easy for you to do. You should be able to do this activity in about 2 seconds, maybe a minute. Maybe your first time around, it's going to take you 5 minutes, and then 3 minutes, then 1 minute, and then next thing you know, you've got the words memorized. The trick is you just essentially want to turn cocina into kitchen. It's not even a new language, it's just an alternate word for it. Okay, so after you've memorized these, now comes in the part of speaking, and this is when we're going to go from English, apartment, to Spanish, apartamento. It'll be a little bit more challenging, but if you've done it backwards the first time around, it'll be much easier than trying to do it this way the first time around. So I say apartment, okay, that's apartamento. It's almost the same word, I got it right, I put it off to the side. Now I've got house, house, that's, I can't remember exactly what it is. Casa, okay, I put it back to the back. Kitchen, we know this is what caused us problems the first time, so it should be stuck in our head. Cocina, it's right, got it. House, casa, got it right, put it off to the side. If you do it like this, and you do this Typically, I like to say when you're getting started, try and do it 3 times a day. Do it with breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You'll see you're going to memorize these words in just a matter of minutes, and next thing you know, you're going to be speaking Spanish with confidence. Let us know if you have any questions at any point throughout this series. I'd love to hear from you. You can reach us at 303-997-9207. And if you're located here in Denver, Colorado, of course, you can visit us at the Language School. We're located at 4730 Oakland Street. We're in Suite 300, and that's Denver, Colorado. Thanks. Ciao.